Welcome back to Closing Time with JD Diskin. My name is Ray Lodato, and Jay, I know you were excited earlier this week, a cultural event for both of us. The ESPN 30 for 30 documentary on Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. How'd you like it?
I don't think I could have liked it anymore. I thought it was an amazing 30 for 30, and I'm a huge fan of the 30 for 30, so the bar is very high, and I'm a huge Ric Flair fan, as of course I'm sure every one of our listeners are as well.
How could you not be?
Right, I mean...
If you don't like it, learn to love it.
For real. And if you want to be the man, Ray, you got to beat the man.
So where do you think it ranks, Jay?
One of my favorites that they don't show too much
Jimmy Connors.
Is the Jimmy Connors one.
Right.
So for our listeners out there, if you can somehow search it, you know, they're more tech savvy than me. That one is a great one. And I'm also a fan of The U, which I think they show a lot.
Oh, yeah, it's a good one.
The University of Miami, but this one is right up there with one of the greats.
Now, you know what The U does now? The University of Miami college football team, every time they get a turnover, they have a turnover chain on the sideline that they put on.
I've seen that, and I love that. They come right to the sideline, they grab the chain, they put it on. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Junkyard Dog, going back to the wrestling.
Now,
days.
keeping it all full circle, you know, in the Nature Boy documentary, they get into Snoop Dogg talks about how Rick was bling before bling was bling. Right, like the godfather of swag.
I also like how Snoop Dogg is able to speak for the entire black community. He's like, he speaks on behalf of them.
Delegate.
Right.
What was your biggest takeaway from the Nature Boy?
What he would be doing after the shows and the drinking was
15 a day.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
My biggest takeaway was that there was no difference between Ric Flair the man and Ric Flair the wrestler. At one point in time, they're talking about how he's on the road all the time and, you know, doesn't spend a lot of time with his family, and how he gets home and he's bored. And he said, well, you know, look, after you've been the world champ, what else is there?
So true.
Right? All right. Well, shout out to the Nature Boy. I'm sure he's a listener, Jay, so he'll be pleased to hear us talk about him. But it's time to get into the heart of the show. And for those that don't know, this weekend, we're having our first Veteran Summit here at HQ. We're flying in PVI members and veterans from across the country to come in and network with each other, talk about their experiences. And we're also bringing in a number of speakers from the military to talk about their experiences and their stories transitioning out of the military sector into the private sector. And we thought, well, you know, this is a perfect opportunity to have on PVI member here out of our PA office. So we have PA remodeling consultant Colt Sain with us today. Colt, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Colt, large man, healthy beard. What was young Colt like on the playground?
Slightly smaller beard.
Okay.
At 8, relatively the same size.
Okay, so puberty hit early.
Yes.
Okay.
I think just name alone. Who's messing with Colt Sain?
I'm not.
Yeah, for real.
And you know I'm big on names.
Right.
That's a name you respect.
Yeah, that is for sure. From birth, you know Colt Sain is definitely going to be kicking some people's asses out there. That is for sure.
Yeah, your parents really set you up there. Now, speaking of setting you up for success, you were a veteran of the armed forces. You served in the military.
Yes, sir.
In the infantry division. And how did all of what you learned in the military, your experiences, the skills, how did that translate to the civilian sector after you left the armed forces?
Overarching things like leadership and things like that, they stuck with me throughout, but specific skill set, it doesn't too much. There's not much useful when I get out, when I got out of the infantry that translated into the civilian world in regards to specific skill set, unless I went into the police force like my father or something along those lines in regards to first responder in that category.
Given that, what were your experiences coming out of the military and into the civilian sector, trying to find work and to find your next career path?
So that was tough. I bounced around a lot. There's a lot of odd jobs, definitely. I spent a significant amount of time working at a gas station. I did construction. I worked at a heavy machinery rental company for like the refinery and things like that. I worked at odd jobs in the mall. I worked at Lucky Brand Jeans for some time. And then I worked for Apple after I got my degree.
And you were working at Apple from, you said, about 2013 to 2017?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And did Apple have a veteran hiring program, or how'd you catch on with them?
I hired on with them after a couple of my friends from high school had, spoken very highly of the job. Very cool place to work, a lot of teamwork, a lot of camaraderie, things like that. My degree was in studio production and digital film, so it aligned with Apple products, I guess you could say. Their software, my degree was solely on Apple products, so I felt it paralleled it.
Given your background, it makes sense that you would take to Apple like a fish in water. What were your experiences there?
Apple was a great company to work for, but you hit your ceiling very, very fast. I felt that there was a lack of upward mobility. And after I've worked there for, it was going on 3 years, I had facilitated quite a bit of training, onboarding of the new hires, some of the newer management that had worked for the company or had been brought into the company. And there was no light at the end of the tunnel. It was just, for lack of a better word, a dark tunnel.
So you're in there, you're busting it, you're doing good work, but you can't seem to get the opportunity that you're looking for. What were you told when you were asking for a path forward?
Upon asking next steps, like what should I do in this scenario, I was given 2 options. It was either transfer across the country or find a new job, and not with Apple. It was leave the company. That was somewhat disheartening to hear from your leadership. So at that point, I started thinking that I was going to have to make a career change.
Even a company as big as Apple, as well known as Apple, there wasn't a path forward for you. There wasn't a clear career path towards where you wanted to go.
No, sir.
And right around then, you found out about Power.
Yes, sir.
How did you find out about Power?
I voiced my opinions of Apple to a coworker. He had his windows done. Mitch Wingrove, we're a modeling consultant here out of Philly, did his windows and asked if he knew of anybody who would be a good fit for the company. He brought up my veteran status, I guess you could say, and things like that. And he said, yeah, and he referred me, and I got a hold of Mitch Wingrove via cell phone and vetted the company out for a little while and took the interview. It was I didn't know Mitch before. I just called him, and I thought this was all, for the lack of a better word, too good to be true. It sounded kind of like a pyramid scheme. And
why is that? What gave you that impression?
I looked it up on Glassdoor. I read a significant amount of reviews, and all of them were along the same lines of, you work hard to play hard, the company takes care of you, but you have to work for it. Nothing's going to be handed to you here. And then I saw that, I was like, oh, you have potential to make, on average, $70,000 to $90,000 your first year. And I just thought that was a little unrealistic, as did my mother, father, all of my close friends, girlfriend, and things like that. And I kind of took the interview a little bit hesitantly with a guard up. It sounded too good to be true, I guess you could say.
Now, coming into Power as a veteran, what was your experience?
Very positive. I was told that, the veteran hiring bonus is a great plus, right? But if that wasn't there, it would still be a positive experience. Day 2 in training with Anthony Scorzetti, we're doing what am I looking for here? Marketing scripts. Thank you, JD.
That's what I'm here for.
My Lord. And I get a knock on the door, and 2 guys came up from the Tiger team, and they introduced themselves and kind of let me know, look, there's this community. We're here for you. We all work in different departments throughout the headquarters office, and if you need anything, reach out, and we'll always be there. And it was kind of cool. It was like the step in the door, and immediately people were kind of like, hey, man, you got a group. You don't have to find who you're going to hang out with, I guess you could say, or that clique of people on your own. It was like, hey, we already did that for you.
I'm sure you've worked with other veterans in the past after your career in the military. Did you feel like there was a special bond between the veterans here at Power?
Absolutely. We do the breakfasts on Friday. Miss Jackie tries to organize those. Those are great. Even if you don't work with them closely, if they're not in the same field as you, or working even in the same office, if you're a part of the veteran community here, you'll see fist bumps all over the office about it. And Josh, Coop, things like that. I don't work with him directly, but I see him in the office and pass him in the hallway, in the elevator, and we have a chat, and it's different compared to other people.
Now, you said earlier when we were talking that Apple didn't have a veteran hiring program.
Absolutely not.
Given your background, what were your thoughts on the Power Vet initiative?
How it was brought up to me and explained was almost how we talk about it in the home on sales appointments, for example, of how it's like, look, we do this selfishly. There's a lot of people here. Some of our heaviest hitting guys and girls are just so happen to be veterans. So why wouldn't we hire more of them? It helps them out. They get good work experience, and we get good people out of it. And I agree with that 100%. It's not fake. It's not like a marketing ploy, right? A lot of people will do that sort of thing to earn business because they back the vets so much and all of this. And really, it's all just, it doesn't hold in the air, and none of that's actually real. Here, you guys are actually making a difference with that.
Now, because the Power Vet initiative is still a newer thing within the walls of Power here, I feel like there might be some people out there that don't exactly know how to communicate what the initiative is, why we're doing it, why it's important to homeowners when they meet with them each night. How do you go about communicating what PVI is, why it's important, why it matters?
I touch on my experiences specifically. When I came home after I was done with my military career, I had a specific skill set that didn't translate very well to the civilian world, and it can be trying to find a job at times. And if we are hired on, if someone takes a chance on us, they can sometimes view us as a liability with all the negative stigma you hear in the media. A lot of PTSD, alcoholism. I mean, the list of negative terms is as long as your arm. And then I kind of break down exactly how I previously stated of how you guys view it. Like, we get good people, they get good work experience. And if this is a stepping stone into their transition back into the civilian world, then great. We hope they stay here forever. But if not, they build their resume up. They get to work with great people. They get to make a substantial amount of money. There's a lot of potential here. And I'm very proud to be a part of a company who's spearheading that transition back into the civilian world.
In your experiences, how do homeowners typically react to PVI when you discuss it in home?
Never negatively. The conversation will switch. You'll see it from them following along, and the company story is when this is laid on, and right towards the end, and they'll go, okay, you'll see them go from, oh, this is great, this is good, this is all we like to hear, and then when you get into this, it takes a more serious turn, I guess you could say. It pulls them back into the conversation if they have since drifted away, I guess you could say.
Well, I think that's important because, Jay, obviously when you partner with a business, you want to make sure that you're getting your money's worth. You want to make sure that you're working with good people that you can trust. But you also want to make sure that the values of that organization reflect your own, which is why I think messaging PVI in home properly is so important.
Like what Colt was saying earlier, I think happens a lot. I think there are a lot of businesses that use their military affiliation for marketing, saying, oh yeah, we're big supporters of the military, but they're not trying to actively bring on people from the military to come work for that organization. And I think with us, it's genuine. Like Colt said, we really want people that have served to come work here, and we think that it makes the business better. When you're talking about that in the home, it makes you more of a real person as opposed to a salesperson and someone that's looking to take their money, as opposed to actually you're a real human being that is looking to help protect their home with getting the job done right with products that are going to last a lifetime.
Jay, as you said, we're looking to bring in more veterans here at Power. So Colt, what advice would you have for one of our listeners if they're talking to a friend or family member or maybe just an acquaintance who's a veteran? What would you communicate about the company that might get their interest?
I would bring up the Tiger team, the veteran community that we have here. Veteran bonus, spouse bonus, all of those things are very, very positive. But then bring up I guess you could say the camaraderie, teamwork that we have here too. There's a community here that you don't have to worry about people relating to you. For my experiences with Apple, I guess you could say, where there weren't that many veterans that worked there, so there wasn't that many people I could relate to and have those conversations with. Here, there's a ton. Walking in the door, you already have a support group, and that's a very refreshing thing to see in the workplace. Anybody who is interested, I would bring up the community of just how we function here.
And speaking of the community, bringing this all full circle, we're right on the eve of the Veteran Summit here at HQ. We're bringing in members of PVI from across the country and other veteran speakers. How excited are you for the summit, and why do you think it's important?
Oh, I think this is great. I've never worked for a company that has shown so much appreciation and I guess you could say dedication towards a specific group of people within the walls like this. This is awesome. We're all very excited. It's all very organized, and I can't wait. I've never had anything done like this for me before.
One thing Colt, you mentioned earlier is that on your second day, that people were welcoming you to the organization. Obviously, now that you've been with the organization, how is it communicated that people are starting, that people have had military experience, so that you're able to do the same thing for them that they did for you? How do you know when people are starting in different departments?
It's all voiced in Nitro. We've got a lot of new hires coming in that are going to be a part of the veteran community, things like that. If you see them in the office, hear their names, reach out to them if you can. That's huge for anybody. I'm happy to be a part of it because I remember how good that felt when I walked in the door and somebody's like, hey man, I'm a vet too. Welcome to the team. Small thing, very short, sweet, but that weighs a ton. So trying to do that for the new hires I like doing it. It makes me feel good.
All right. Well, I think that just about wraps up this week's episode. Colt, I think we're all real excited to experience the Veteran Summit this coming weekend. And thanks so much for taking some time to come on the show and talk with us about your experiences here at Power.
Thank you both for having me.
All right. And for all of our listeners out there, again, we want to put together a listener mailbag episode of Closing Time. So if you have any questions, suggestions, or maybe you just want to take a shot at Jay and I, shoot an email to digital@powerhrg, put Closing Time in the subject matter, and we'll make sure to get to your question or remark on air. But for JD Diskin and Colt Sain, my name is Ray Lodato, and ABC. Always be closing.
Woo!